Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Particle Accelerator podcast, where we talk to future-thinking business leaders about innovation and business growth. And I am very fortunate today to be with Stacy LeBaron, who is an avid cat lover. And I will let you introduce yourself. I'm super excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So yeah, I'm Stacy LeBaron. I wear many hats, but I am first and foremost a cat lover. And I am all about turning your passion for cats into action. So animal welfare is my love and passion. I've been involved with animal welfare and specifically cats since 1994. And I really feel like over the years, there's just so much we can do to help the lives of cats. There's no reason for us to have cat overpopulation and to have cats suffering in shelters and that kind of thing. So I am here to empower, to engage, to convince folks that there is a way to make change in the lives for cats, which inevitably changes the lives of all of us. How many of us have pets, right? We all have pets. And so let's make a difference for everybody, for the lives of pets, and not depend on shelters to do all the work. We can do it ourselves using technology, using different business models, thinking outside of the box and just making change. And I'm involved in so many different organizations that are just trying to turn that passion for cats into action. Again, I've been involved for about 30 years in this. And I've been successful in parts of Massachusetts and all around the country with different programs. And I believe we can do it all around the United States as well as around the world, for sure.
Awesome. So why don't we talk a little bit about a couple of those things? So you have a podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the podcast?
Sure. So we have the Community Cats podcast. I am the head cat at the Community Cats podcast. And that's was started with myself and my technical tabby partner, Kristen Petrie. And so it's communitycatspodcast.com. We started in June of 2016. So we have over 500 episodes and over 500,000 downloads of the podcast. We are out there just trying to spread the word, share stories. So many people in the animal welfare space feel like they're doing this all alone. No one else cares about animals, but we do, and others do too, and we're sharing those stories. And also just trying to share different ideas about how you could approach the challenges in your community. So you don't always have to be the same thing in every community, depending on the resources that are available. So trying to think strategically about those needs and just realize it's not just you.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'd like to get to know you a little bit. And the way that I typically do that is I ask, what was your first job? For me, it was a paper route. So I'm not talking about postgraduate work here or any of that. Like for me, my first dollar I ever earned was slinging papers. What was your first job?
I was baking birthday cakes for the teachers in the history department at my high school.
Okay, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Very strange.
How did that entrepreneurial venture of cake baking come about?
I hate cooking, by the way. I hate cooking, but they posted a flyer up on one of the boards in the high school, and they said they'd pay $10 for a cake, and there were, I think, 8 teachers maybe in the department. It was not a big school that I was at. And I was like, wow, I could use that like $80 in the long run. And so I probably was the only person who signed up, and nobody complained, but they were not the best cakes in the world. They were a little saggy and a little bit, this and a little bit that. I'm sure they were a little crunchy with some eggshells in there, but nobody ever complained to me. But yeah, that was my first official entrepreneurial position.
That's cool. So what toy or hobby did you have as a child that inspired what you do career-wise today? I mean, there had to be a first cat or a first interaction, but what toy or hobby did you have as a child that inspired what you do today?
Yeah, so obviously, yes, I did have a cat named Duncan. She was 7 years older than I was. And so she was a grumpy old cat by the time I came into this world. And so she taught me about respecting a cat's personal space and respecting her her independent soul and all that as a little kid who wants to run up and hug and cuddle. I learned very quickly that wasn't the thing you did with every cat out there. But we always had just one cat in the family. And she was with us for quite a long time. She lived to be 20 years old. So she was around for quite a long time. And then I'd say the only other thing that really engaged me in the entrepreneurial spirit is I was always the class treasurer. I was always the person who helped, organize events. I was sort of a community organizer within school. And I really believed in the power of community, not doing things just as a one-off or that kind of thing. I liked group projects. I liked working as a team. And I liked being the organizer of that team. And I loved counting money too. And so those were sort of the things that came with me. My father had started his own business. So the dining room table was full of, conversation about business and how to grow business and that kind of thing too.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I feel like a good place to introduce a cat story here. So we have a tabby cat. That tabby cat was kind of like a rescue, little bit of an impulsive thing. And it was because, I was walking past the pet store where the rescue place was there with all the animals. And we saw this tabby cat, somewhat skittish cat, kind of was hanging out in the master closet for a few days to acclimate to my ex-wife and I. But we have had that cat since my son was 2 and he's now 18. So we're probably 16 years we've had the cat. So really pushing the age. So you mentioned grumpy old, definitely a lot of jowling right now, especially at night. And just we don't know what the cat is actually experiencing with the old age. But definitely we have that geriatric cat for sure.
Right. Yeah. Running into hearing loss and that kind of thing too. So
for sure. But it has been a great family cat. Hangs out around the dining table on the dining room chairs. And so typically the cat is, we call it Fancy, is sharing the lap of somebody in one of the dining room chairs during dinner. So very much a part of the family. And I find that when I'm stressed, here comes the cat and just puts herself on the lap, and just seems to have some awareness of my stress level. And I don't know that she does that with anybody else, so it's pretty special.
Nice.
Cool. So, what quote from a famous person lives in your mind rent free?
Ooh. That's a tough one. What quote? I don't have one, honestly. I don't. I wish I did have one, but I don't. The only I'm in New England, so live free or die is the one that
I like it.
See the most, right? And we just had July 4th here, so. But yeah, I guess. I'm not a great. I'm very zen. I'm a very forward-looking person, so I don't capture a lot from the behind side. But I guess live free or die. I guess would be what I think of most.
For sure. What do you feel like the greatest invention or discovery in the past 300 years is?
Oh, interesting. Greatest invention in the cat world has been the invention of cat litter, which started out in the 1950s. It was actually, there's a product sort of called, I think it's called oil dry or something like that, which was to use with the cars to mop up the oil when it dripped in the shops. And somebody decided to try using that with a box in their house for litter box, because before the 1950s, there was no litter box concept for cats. So cats were living their lives mainly outside. They were not regular, the house cat didn't exist. And so in the world of cats, things changed dramatically in terms of how we perceive their role in society by the creation of cat litter in the 1950s. And then we moved into more of the very active and aggressive in the 60s and 70s of spaying and neutering our cats.
Mm-hmm. bringing them in the house, that like the idea of an inside cat before the 50s wouldn't have existed. So we get the discovery of cat litter now. A cat's not just an outdoor thing that keeps your rodent population down. It's now a member of the family inside the house. Interesting, very interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. That's so cool. All right. So, well, what tech trend is significantly impacting, what you're doing today, and how are you guys responding to that?
Right. So technology has made a huge difference with regards to animal welfare, especially for adoptions and for the collection of data and information. So having apps on your phone to be able to adopt a cat, just going through your phone and adopt, where old school adoptions in the 90s when I started, people would have to come in, fill out a piece of paper. There was all like, we were just starting in like Excel spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. So now having apps to be able to do adoptions, being able to see, there's a site called Pet Finder. So you can search for pets for a variety of, it's sort of like the Travelocity for adoptions of pets, I guess. You can see multiple locations, and in one area, you say, I want to have an orange tabby cat, and look within 30 miles of where I am, and you can find all the different organizations that have posted those cats. And then also in terms of just general business management, the accounting software, the development software has made life so much easier on the administrative side of things. And the dream world is, and there are several organizations trying to do that, is to get all of these different software packages to integrate, amongst one another. And that's more of my dream. There's still a lot of gaps from efficiency in terms of being able to answer people's questions. A lot of organizations don't respond to phone calls and that kind of stuff. And just being able to use either chatbots or AI to be able to respond to some of these basic questions and have them programmed in on folks' websites. That's like the next step, so that then that front line, that front of the house, can be taken care of virtually. And because staffing costs are huge in animal welfare.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting so much on what is the barrier for all small business, right? There's great tools, but they don't talk to each other. So I end up with a data entry problem between my accounting software and my CRM. And I imagine any rescue is keeping a list of who they're trying to get placed and what's going on, but that doesn't talk to the accounting software or the website. And that's kind of like the common business problem, right? That's why IT integrators exist today, like me. And you just hit a bunch of things, some of the technology innovations that you're betting on to drive business growth. Sounds like you'd like to see more integration between what organizations have and how you can not have to necessarily talk to a person. So talk a little bit more about technology innovations that you would like to see to help drive business growth.
So many of the programs that we run at the Community Cats podcast, we have the first Saturday of every month, we have something called a Trap Neuter Return Certification Workshop. So these are folks that like have 3 or 4 cats in their backyard, and they're not touchable, and they need to trap them in a humane trap and bring them to a spay neuter clinic to get them fixed so that they don't turn into 20, 30 cats. And so we have these virtual training sessions, and where they take a test at the end and they get certified so that they can get access to low cost spay neuter services, which is wonderful. But the discoverability of this program is, or of any program in terms of understanding trap, neuter, return, you don't need to have a human being tell you about that. You can have a chatbot say, if someone says, I've got 4 cats in my backyard, I need someone to help me get them fixed, or I just need I have 4 stray cats in my backyard. You can have somebody say, well, tell me, can you touch the cats? If they're friendly, we put a paper collar on them to see if someone else is feeding them. I mean, there are these different pathways that people need to do with their due diligence in figuring out what's the best course of action for these cats. And there's a flow chart that goes with that.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't have to be done by a human being. That flow chart can be recorded and can be tracked. And you can also say, oh, did you know that Sally Joe down the street is also feeding an orange tabby cat down there? Maybe you're both feeding the same cat too. So there's a whole range of information that could be collected in an automated fashion to help us work more efficiently.
Yeah, that's really cool. What do you think some of the most significant gaps are between getting to something like that where folks are aware of how to solve that problem and the realities of today?
Well, I would say in the animal welfare space, and this may be just true in the nature of business, is that every business wants to own their own business, and there's not a lot of cross collaboration desire. And so I feel that some of these solutions for society fall outside of the realm of an individual business, and it's more overarching and trying to sort of be more public. So trying to look at it more publicly, public facing as more of an umbrella rather than being, this is the Tulsa Humane Society's, chat bot. And then this is somebody else's Colorado's chat bot or whatever. It's actually having the same tool universally used all across the board so that we're all speaking the same language, because in the animal welfare, everybody's trying to track their own thing, but sometimes they're just not overlapping enough.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. It's almost like, weren't most of the recycling programs kind of like this, where they were very like localized and they were doing different, and not until we kind of organized recycling. I'm still shocked that like I can't recycle the plastic bags. I have to take those to a special center. And so it sounds like your spay, catch and return, or catch, spay and return process needs some additional visibility. So that's really interesting. I mean, I think a lot of business problems, it's more of like a problem-based marketing. Like, are you a person that has X problem? And then if you are, hey, listen to this next piece because it's really important. And so a lot of times people don't know the problem they have. They don't know how to put a name to it. If they did, then they could Google search it and find it. But a lot of times we're trying to discover folks as they're in that discovery phase and help them with even the language, because internet searches don't work unless you have the language.
Right. I mean, so many people don't know what TNR is. They don't know what spay neuter is. I mean, how to get my cat fixed is about the most Googled phrase out there. I'm on the board of directors of United Spay Alliance, which is all about accessing affordable spay neuter. And we do, as a nonprofit, you can participate in Google grants. And so you can do advertising that way. And like, how to get my cat fixed is one of the most popular, like, Googled phrases out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Just this idea of fixed versus, if it weren't for Bob Barker, I probably wouldn't know what spay and neuter is too. I just remember seeing those Price is Right reruns when I was on sick days, or watching the Price is Right on sick days. And he was such a good advocate for that movement, the spay neuter movement. If it weren't for Bob Barker, I don't know that I would know what it is. So as you think about what you're trying to do with your organizations and your podcast, how do you do your planning? How do you connect like your planning, your roadmap with your strategy? And just talk a little bit about that. I love to hear from business leaders how they do their planning, and do they do annual planning? How do you kind of connect where you want to go to where you are? And talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I'm going to just start out with a little bit of background. So back in the 90s, I started out as a president of an organization called the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society. And that's really where I sort of did the proof of concept of how to reduce cat overpopulation in the community. So I started a mobile spay neuter clinic program there. So we have 2 cat mobiles that drive around and offer spay neuter services. They have an adoption program. As well as was a very aggressive trap neuter return program for 300 cats in a certain community there in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and there are no cats there at this point in time. So we really created a successful model. So I believe that at that point in time, around 2005, 2008, I've said, okay, so we did it right. So how can we replicate this? And how can we, grow this out above and beyond just our local community? And so I started the Community Cats podcast to be able to share the success story and also to create this toolkit to be able to share with other organizations all across the country. With that, as I developed the strategic thought and planning, we entered into a world where there's a veterinary shortage and spay-neuter appointment shortage. And so I had to join the United Spay Alliance and help them build and grow capacity building for spay-neuter, because you can't have a trap-neuter return program if you can't do any neuters, right? So if there's no spay-neuter resources in your community, TNR groups are going to have to create their own. So there's Flatbush Cats in Brooklyn, New York. They were known as a very successful trap-neuter return organization in New York. Their spay-neuter resource got reduced significantly during the pandemic, so they had to start the Flatbush Clinic in Brooklyn. The guy's who founded Flatbush, he's like, I'm a marketing guy. I am not a veterinarian. I wouldn't know how to spay a cat, at all. But he had to start a clinic because he needed that neuter. To be able to be impactful, you have to be able to offer spay-neuter surgeries. So then I created, working on creating the Community Cat Clinic, which has 2 private practice clinics in Georgia, because it's we need to have a higher capacity for spay-neuter. Cats can reproduce very easily. We need to do it in the private sector environment, not as a nonprofit. And therefore, that's why I started the Community Cat Clinic. And the hope is that we'll be able to franchise that out as a model to be able to sustainably support the spay-neuter needs of the community, as well as the general needs for the health and wellness of cats across all communities, and not be faced with economic euthanasia or making decisions to not be able to have families be able to help the cats in their towns.
Yeah. So a question pops in my mind. How do communities generally fund that? Like if you found you found an advocate, a veterinarian that's willing to really serve the community with spay and neuter. That's a great thing for them, because then they get to know everybody and they get that publicity. Talk to me a little bit more about the business around that, because it sounds like you found a model for convincing veterinarians to do the spay and neuter, but who pays for that?
Right. So basically, when I was running the Merrimack River Feline Rescue Society, we had several local veterinarians who were just starting practices. And so they gave us reduced fees. And what we would do is with every adoption, their name was splashed at the top of the paperwork. So they, got clients as a result of that. There are opinions that folks have, which as cats, so as your income level goes down, the number of cats you have go up. As your income level goes up, the number of dogs you have go up. So cats are actually a luxury good that has an inverse relationship, which is extremely interesting to many economists out there. But so there is a theory out there, 70 to 75% of revenues in a traditional veterinary practice come from dogs. 25% comes from cats. So yes, so how do you make the business model work? You really have to price. So many of our prices, I would say, are about 50% to a third of what I would call retail pricing. And then you use what are called high quality, high volume spay-neuter techniques and high quality, high volume techniques for other services when working with clients to better serve them with their cats in a way that works for both the practice as well as for the family, so that they're not overburdened with unnecessary expensive testing, but yet the needs of the cats are still being served by the practice and by the clinic. And then the staff is being paid appropriately because you have these efficiency techniques going on in the practice to be able to get higher revenues, but you're also dealing with higher volume too. So we use a model where we have case managers. So the technicians are really the drivers of the practice. They're the ones that have the one-on-one relationship with the clients, and then the veterinarians come in like specialists. So they're in for like 15 minutes, but the the technicians are really the one who has the relationship with the owner. And then the veterinarians have a relationship, but it's a more of a specialized relationship where the technicians are there to sort of answer any questions, to listen, to take the notes and do all that. So it's a technician heavy model versus a veterinary heavy model.
Sure. Yeah, that makes total sense. So teaching them how they can really do the spay neuter at scale, and make it work for the community, and then show them how that they can also use it as an advertising source for the community, so that families that have both a dog and a cat are going to go to them first. That's so innovative. What lessons have you learned from failure? I always ask this because everybody learned some hard lesson some way. And so what's a lessons learned that you could share?
Failure. We have many when we were building our Catmobile program, we felt when we added a second Catmobile that like you build it and the world will come. And we had hit a critical mass and that we had to really pivot and readjust. The beauty of a Catmobile program is that it's mobile. So like if you go to a town and you don't have any cats show up, you can move your vehicle to another town. So that was lucky. Being nimble is certainly important. And so to say it was a failure, we may have put the Catmobile into towns that it shouldn't have been in the first place. So it made our ramp up a lot slower. But I would say in any situation, I haven't felt like 100% failure in having to like exit out of anything. I've just had to pivot and restructure the business model in order to make it at least get to 70% of mission objectives.
Right. And then that's maybe a good question. So what are your mission objectives with the podcast right now? How do you measure success there?
So we measure our success obviously by, the number of downloads that we have, our
Sure.
outreach, and then transferring into educational opportunities. So we offer 30 online educational opportunities through the Community Cats podcast. And we we usually have about 300 to 400 attendees at our events. They're virtual events during the course of the year. And then I would say, secondarily to that, we used to administer a Community Cats Grants program, which provides funding to trap, neuter, return groups. And we have very high participation rates in that. We teach them how to fundraise, so how to scale their own fundraising efforts, because a lot of trap, neuter, return organizations, a lot of nonprofits in general, the small ones, they're busy in the doing and they're not into the fundraising or the business development, the sustainability. And we try to coach them over in that fundraising level. So by having significant support and interest in that program is always very, very exciting. I guess I would say those are our big, obviously we have financials. We want to be a sustainable business and get enough revenue in through our sponsors and our advertisers and our supporters, our attendees at the events. We want to make sure that we are a sustainable and viable business because we've now been around for 8 years. And at this point, we're looking at a way of making sure it's going to be sustainable, beyond my lifetime and somebody else's lifetime. So just looking at making sure that we have a footprint that's solid, that somebody else could take us on if we needed to make a transition.
Yeah, larger NPO or something.
Yep.
That is so cool. I am so blown away and impressed by this story, like figuring out how to really help a community have a proper cat population, help people know how to keep that maintained, for them to know what to do if the cats around them are getting overpopulated, help kind of centralize or coordinate some of the adoption activities. And you proved all of that out with your mobile cat rescue vehicle. So awesome. And now you are literally taking that model and basically giving it away to everyone in a podcast approach. And having 300 people tap into a virtual event, 300 to 400 people tap into a virtual event to hear what you've learned and check in with how they're helping their community accomplish this mission. I'm just absolutely floored. It's so cool to hear that. How how are you managing all of that, and then how do you kind of manage that culture of fluency, and you're doing a lot of stuff right. How do you help others?
Yeah, well, one thing is it's very important for me to be available for the community. It's, I get phone calls from folks. They think, people think you get phone calls all the time. I actually don't get that many phone calls, which is really nice. But when people do call, they're like, oh my gosh, you answered the phone, and, let me tell you the story of what's going on in, New Jersey or whatever. And so trying to make sure that each individual feels like there's a connection there. I will connect, I will respond. One of my team will, we're a very small team. Don't get me wrong. It's me and just 2 other people. So it's not like we have a multi-million-dollar budget behind us. But we have a lot of similarities. So I also think of myself as the great connector. So I will connect people with other people and make sure, people who have the same issues. So trying to connect them so that they feel supported. We have a business model called the community cat pyramid. So you're talking about taking that mobile clinic, taking the rescue component, taking the trap, neuter, return program. How much in each community do you need to do in order to achieve the ultimate objective, which is having, no unacknowledged community cats out there. It's really making sure that every cat has their needs served in whatever way that works for them. So I just really feel like as a business, it's but stay focused, not try to go off track too much. But again, everybody loves cats, or everybody has some relationship with cats. They might not all love cats, but people have relationships with cats. Just trying to tap into that and see what we can all do for everybody. Just be an open door. Anybody, bird lovers, you can come, you can watch. It doesn't matter, just join.
Sure. And I think we can all have a common bond around a bunch of animals getting euthanized is not a way we want to run society. It's not a way we want our community to function. And then I think we even have, as our communities, I'm saying this carefully, as our communities globalize, I think we have even more in common with our neighbors around preventing this kind of mass euthanizing practice. So if we can do the spay and neuter practice at a larger scale, then I think we'll all feel better about how our communities operate.
And technology is so welcome in the veterinary space. There's just a ton of opportunity there. I mean, there's just so much that could be done for efficiency on the software side that it's just totally untapped. I mean, again, booking software to make sure that no spay neuter appointment gets left behind. That's like my dream.
That's cool. We'll definitely talk about more about that offline. Cause we love helping out with those types of apps. A buddy of mine was just writing about how his HOA had a really ridiculous app for some of the reserved parking that the HOA was managing for the community. And he was just so frustrated by it that he wrote his own and gave it to his HOA for free because he just couldn't stand what people were having to try to use for that. And then now he's offering it to some folks. So love that. Cool. Well, what would you say to entrepreneurs or young folks, just with some of your experience? Can you share an experience or some advice that you'd say that are beginning their professional journey?
Sure. I would certainly say that if you have an idea or a thought of, how to have a business idea that would also improve your community, don't be shy. Launch. Just go, because it's you'll learn along the way. And when you go into making any business plan, do always kind of have an exit. I haven't had to use an exit yet, but I do always have an exit plan. And it's so important. I learned very early on when I was in situations where there was like no backup money, how am I going to make payroll the next week and that kind of thing. And I learned a lot about how to respect the planning, the organizing. You had asked me the question of like, how do you plan for I'm already planning 2025 now for the podcast and our programming and everything. And I even am planning into 2026. And so you've got to stay focused on the immediate, but don't lose sight of where you want to go to. So depending on your personality, understand where your strengths and your weaknesses are, but you do have to kind of live in both spaces.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. We talk a lot about working on the business and in the business. So, like splitting those and having, yes, I need to execute the kind of the work at hand, but I also need to take time for that strategy. And some roles in the company are definitely like maybe an 80-20 where, hey, yeah, we want you to just, kind of come out from the work, think about, am I doing it the right way? While some may be 50-50 or 80-20 the other way. Like my role may be more 80-20 in versus on. But an individual contributor may be the reverse, like a 90-10. But having that margin to think about, to kind of have an out of body experience, hey, are we doing all the right things? Lock the plan in and then go for it is super powerful. So that's great advice.
I will also, if I can just add quickly, that it's also understanding you have the control. So understanding that you're making choices about how you're using your time, about what direction you're going in. And I will also say that batch work is my friend. So if you can batch it, do it. If you have writing you have to do for your business, batch it. If you do podcasts, batch it. Do them in a whole series, 6-hour shots, 8 hours, depending on what your strength, your energy level is. But if you can batch your work, please do it because it's the best way to move the needle.
That's so good. That is so good. Somebody just told me, are you a Newton thinker about time or are you an Einstein thinker about time? Do you believe that like both are kind of true? Like time is a finite thing. Newton wasn't wrong. But if we have a mindset that time is fixed, it's scarce, I hardly have any of it, then we act a certain way. But if we think, hey, we actually can create time, like time is relative and we make the time comes from us, then we have a very different mindset about things. Sitting in front of your email can waste a lot of time. Yeah. Checking your email in batches a few times a day can put that under control. So that's great advice as well. Love that. And then, yeah, I've been trying this 45-minute kind of sprint blocks. Like, okay, I have 45 minutes, no meetings. This 45 minutes is going to be dedicated to this activity and thinking about these like 45-minute sprints. Yep. That's been super helpful for me. And one final thing I'm seeing a lot is this idea of time compression. So you're probably doing this to some extent where you're thinking about your podcast out into 2025. But I feel like a lot of businesses are falling into this annual planning as almost like a trap, like it's broken. Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to be here at the end of 2025. And then they don't actually say, okay, well, then what needs to be true in January? Like what needs to be true? And so seeing a lot of good work on kind of the idea of compressing time and giving yourself, what's the Parkinson's law? Work will expand to fill the space.
Yeah, right.
That's cool.
I think, we use Asana project management software. And one thing we haven't done is we're good with the tasks, but now we're putting the time amount around the task. So how long it takes the person to do the task, just so that then there's an understanding. And I might be able to do it faster or slower than the other person, but at least it gives us a ballpark figure of how much time it takes them to, book out social media for the month or something like that. just so that I might have a perspective of what it would take, but then in reality, it's taking that person either longer or less just to try to have an understanding of how time is. And I personally, I'm not a fan of working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. I'm not a fan of it. And I don't think you have to in order to be productive. I like sleeping 9 hours at night. I like playing tennis because that's the one time where I'm not thinking about work. I'm having a hard enough time trying to remember the score. And so, it's understanding I work better in like a 20 to 30 hour work week versus longer hours. Now, there are other people, they like working, or I don't know about liking, but they do work these longer hours. And I tire out. I just become not functional. So it doesn't work for me. So again, you're like that compression. Find the compression that works for you and then understand it and build it within your schedule.
Yeah, I love that because it's all about freedom at the end, right? The freedom to do it one way or other, to get the things done that you need to get done so that you can do that. So good. A few friends have pulled me to pickleball, which is a new trend out here in Dallas. That's the new thing. All these amazing facilities with multiple courts and full bars, and pickleball's a thing now all of a sudden.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. Well, if people like what you shared today and they want to get in contact with you, how should they do that?
Yeah, sure. So my website is communitycatspodcast.com. So you can just go right there to the website. My email is Stacy, Stacy, at communitycatspodcast.com. Feel free to email is best. Honestly, my phone is always turned off basically. So email is best. I check my emails quite regularly in batches throughout the day. So I'm a good responder. I respond within 24 hours. And so people can email me there and I can respond there. We are also on Community Cats Podcast is on social media all around, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. So you can find us at all of those places.
Yeah. So who represents your most interesting conversations? Is it veterinarians? Is it just folks in the community? But who do you like? The marketing term is like, who's your ICP, or who do you like talking to the most? Who do you target?
So my listeners are individual folks that are out there just trying to care for cats in whatever way in their community, whether they're a foster home, whether they're a trapper, we call them trappers for trap, neuter, return, whether they work in animal sheltering, animal control officers. So I guess what is our avatar? Our largest avatar is the local small scale trap, neuter, return people who are out there just trying to get as many community cats spayed as neutered as possible. In terms of who I interview, a lot of those are those smaller individual stories, but I also love interviewing veterinarians who are really passionate about what they're doing to help cats in the community. And I have a fun time interviewing them, learning their tips and tricks, as well as learning from some of the smaller organizations that have grown to become bigger organizations. Like they started out trapping 50 cats a year and now they're doing 5,000. And how did they scale? How did they grow to become such a large organization? That's the story I love to know, is how do you start small and then grow big when you're like 3 people on the board and you're, struggling to just pay the vet bill. How do you make it to the end?
Yeah, that's so good. Well, awesome. Well, this has been awesome. I really have enjoyed this. I really wasn't sure what to expect in all candor, but this has been amazing to talk to you and get to know how amazing of a business operator you are, and just hear your story. So, thank you for being here today and sharing with us.
Thank you so much.